When we talk about transformation, obviously I think it's the changing global architecture and the rise of the BRIC economies. For Africa, it presents an opportunity, new markets, new partners for trade, but it's also a challenge because it's competition from these very competent East Asian economies. How can Africa manage?
Well, I think Africa has to face the fact that it is fragmented. Many of our countries are fragmented, and therefore they don't act as a cohesive force. Talking of BRICS, we are talking of countries which are relatively large and strong. South Africa is one of those. And therefore, one of the things that Africa must address is the issue of regional integration. I think it's only in that way that they can gain clout to deal with the emerging markets, because the transformation really means that Africa has moved a little more to the east than the west, because the west is weakening. So it offers an opportunity for us to move, to engage with new partners in the Asian markets.
The challenges in Africa, and we know them, labor and the skills that are lacking in labor, productivity of economies, infrastructure gaps. How can Africa overcome some of these?
Well, the infrastructure basically is again a function of the fragmentation of the states, because especially roads, railways are extremely badly organized, and therefore they need to attend to that. And in fact, we thought that a global or continent-wide organizations such as NEPAD had actually come in to play that role of linking countries and dealing with the large-scale continental projects like infrastructure. But that is going on, but I don't know how successfully that is taking shape. But regarding the other shortfalls is that skills, the skills are important in the capacities to do things, what is lacking in our economies. And I think institutions of learning, are involved in this issue, but it's also doubtful to the extent to which universities are linked within the industries, because this is where the idea of innovation can take place if universities link with business and try to develop new ideas.
Let's talk about the opportunities that exist in Africa. Obviously, the continent is endowed with mineral resources, so we've got commodities as a boost. We've also got a rise of a new middle class, over 160 million people earning over $5,000. And we're also seeing innovations in ICT. Will these be the drivers of this change in Africa?
I think that will be so if, again, we overcome these constraints such as small markets. I think the steps that are being taken, for instance, in the East African community do address these issues. For instance, the market has expanded to include new countries such as Burundi and Rwanda, to 5 countries, a population of something like 115 million people. This is attracting a lot of international investment because of that development. There are also political problems connected with that, namely the fast tracking of the East African Federation alongside this economic integration. We don't know how that political side is likely to go, and normally if we go by the past, the first East African community, it's always the political problems which tend to create problems of integration.
Fora where Africa can raise its voice. I know quite a few African countries are lobbying for a permanent seat on the UN Security Council. South Africa's just been invited to the Heads of State Summit of the BRIC economies. How are these going to help?
Yeah, I think that will help if South Africa, especially, in my view, South Africa should be at the center of this development, because they are one of the BRIC countries, and therefore South Africa being there should enable African countries to work closely with South Africa, so that South Africa can show them how to get into this market and do things together. And so that is, I think, the way to go. The other weaknesses, we have to overcome them, especially the issue of small markets and integration. That's the the way I think we should go.
And finally, just your views on things that have been happening in North Africa, the Libyan civil war, as they're calling it now, the situation in Tunisia, Egypt. It's had huge bearing on Africa because many investors see the continent as one place. They don't do the geographical separation.
Libya is just one country, but I think the developments in the Arab world, because we are connected, Egypt especially, I think this is a major development in the world. It will affect the entire world, the so-called Facebook revolutions of the Arab countries. The Arab Revolution, in my view, opens a new era of transformation, political transformation, of a very enlightened young generation insisting on rights. I think this to me, I gave a lecture recently last week at the University of South Africa in which I talked about this issue. I think that this Africa has to take note of this, and many African leaders are beginning to shake, to panic, and think that this might affect them adversely. But this is an opportunity. I think the Arab Revolution shows that we need to move along the way of creating more space for our people to express themselves.